The Talos Pain Engines are seen as the pinnacle of the homunculized art creations of mad genius. Each one is both part organic and part mechanic, festooned with surgical apparatus and horrific weapons of war. In this tutorial, I'll be showcasing how to paint up the Talos engine as part of the Drukhari Combat Patrol in next to no time at all, using the powers of speed contrast paints. At first glances, this model is imposing when it comes to painting. I want to break that cycle of thinking by showcasing how you can keep the paint scheme really straightforward and simple, but equally making it look professional on a tabletop, in a display cabinet, with as much ease as possible. It's a fantastic model, and I'll be showcasing the Kronos very soon too. So without further ado, grab your paints, grab your brushes, let's get hobbying. And let's get cracking with our awesome Talos model. Now, to begin with, to note, obviously don't build it on the stand. It is built fully and it's been primed in white scar. Once that was done, I just used a mold line remover, scraped out the paint where the ball socket joint is, and just glued it in. Just keeps it nice and simple without ruining the flight stand. Now, it is a complex model. We're going to keep the colour scheme pretty simple and straightforward, so it's not over elaborate, but just looks equally fantastic at the same time. So to begin with, we're going to focus on the flesh. Now, there's a lot of flesh details, but the most really important thing is there's a lot of areas that are hard to get to. In a sense, they're not hard to get to at this stage, but if we paint the other details first, it's just going to make it trickier, it's going to make it messier, and then it becomes stressful. And the whole point of a hobby is it's not stressful. So to begin with, we're going to keep it exactly the same as my homunculus. In a sense, we're doing the classic Prophets of Flesh cult scheme. So the best way to make this is we're going to take one part of Darkoath Flesh, 2 parts of Magos Purple, and 4 parts of Lahmium Medium. Now that's a rough mix. I made quite a bigger pool of this rather than I did for a small model, because obviously there's a lot of surface area to create. So pop those ratios into a palette and simply paint it straight on the flesh. Where you start, that's up to you. I started with an arm, do it all the way down. Then you've got like the chest cavity, do the other arm, do the main body. There's plenty of sections where we can do it, and the Lahmium Medium's not really going to create, well, it's going to prevent a lot of dry lines, as long as you're not wasting time. You know, you still got to move quickly, but you've got a lot of wiggle room. So get that done. You can pretty much see a little 360 there, every section that I've covered. Don't worry too much, we get on the cables, we're going to use a lot of brighter stuff, and we can always fix with white scar should we need to. Now, normally at this stage, I'd continue on painting rather than doing highlights, but good miniature painters know when to do highlights first, because there's going to be certain areas that are harder to reach. Now, for instance, there's a lot of flesh here, and we want to dry brush it. There's no point edge highlighting all this, especially when you've got a tail that's as complex as this, where a dry brush can cheekily hit every single edge and give a nice highlight to begin with. Same for the muscles and all the joints. So the colour I'm using here is Pallid Wych Flesh. Simply, I've used a medium-sized dry brush and just dry brushed it on. It just gives a subtle highlight to all of that skin tone, and it means A, in the future, we don't catch any details that we painted later on, and B, it just gets the skin completely done and out of the way, and we can just focus on the rest of the model now. So it's well worth doing it now. I would not recommend doing it later, just in case you accidentally catch all the other details. Next up, we're base coating all of the armour of our Talos model. Now, I am going to do, if you've seen my other videos before, a method where you're going to have to do 0 highlights. Essentially, we're doing an underlayer, which is the colour you see here. Think of this as the edge highlight colour. We're then going to add something in the next step, which is going to darken it down towards ink by darkness, that kind of colour tone that we see on the box art, while leaving this as the edge highlight in place. But for it to work, you need this underlayer. So the paints we're using here is a mix. It's going to be 1 part of Akhelian Green, roughly 1 part of Aeldari Emerald, and again roughly 1 part of Lahmium Medium. And when I say roughly, it is a 1:1:1 ratio, but I've mixed it in a big pool because there's a lot to cover. So I've taken the Citadel Skull palette, I've poured 1 part of each in a sort of mini puddle to create a big puddle, and applying it straight on. Contrast paints normally don't work on flat areas like this, but the Lahmium Medium both helps to thin it down to get this colour consistency that I want, but it also allows you to pull the paint around and stop it from settling heavily on flat areas, creating a mix of just, you know, it just doesn't look good. If you've ever painted contrast paint straight over armor panels this big, it doesn't generally work. The Lahmium Medium is the key ingredient here. So get that done. I've painted all the armor, as you can see. Takes a while, and just be careful as you approach the skin. We don't want to apply it on that. Next up, we're taking it to the next level. Now this is where I talked about the underlayer before. You can see as the edge highlight is the previous colour that we created. What essentially I'm doing here is I'm recreating Ink by Darkness, but using contrast paints only. And the mix is quite complicated. It says it's not complicated, but it's complex. And there's going to be a bit of method and a bit of application knowledge that's going to be needed here. So to begin with, let's talk about the mix. I've taken into a palette and made a rather large pool of roughly 2 parts Black Legion, 1 part Black Templar, 3 parts Terradon Turquoise, and 1 part Lahmium Medium. Now essentially we're mixing that together and we're painting it over. It's going to be quite thin, and this is where I'm debating, do we need the Lahmium Medium? The Lahmium Medium helps the flow over the large areas, but we're wanting it to pull heavily, but not heavily in the sense where it drains down and ruins our details. We want to apply it in a sort of heavy amount rather than a nice thin layer. But at the same time, you don't want it too heavy where it's going to pull, thicken and spoil your details. So there's some couple of things to note here. When you get into these edges here, sort of on there where I've done that thin edge highlight, because we can control where it goes, you only need 1 coat. When you get to areas like this, you'll need 2 coats. I found when you did the large flat areas, because the Lahmium Medium does help with the flow, because Terradon Turquoise is quite translucent, it's not black enough, it needs 2 to 3 coats to get this solid layer. It takes time, but what we do is by avoiding all the edges, we've got it instantly highlighted to an extreme scale. It saves time. All that armor is now fully done. So it's one of those things. If you do it straight all over and just do repeated coats, avoiding all the edges, you can absolutely do that, but you're then going to have to dry brush highlights by hand. I would have to recommend something like Sybarite Green, just to like do as a dry brush highlight. But we can use the previous colour. Using this method, it does take time, but it would take a lot longer if you were to edge highlight by hand. And you get a lot more control over the highlights that you want. So take your time. Once again, 2 parts Black Legion, 1 part Black Templar, 3 parts Terradon Turquoise, 1 part Lahmium Medium if you want help with the flow. Though if I was to do it again, I'd probably skip the Lahmium Medium, and you might then have to do less than 2 coats on the top. Don't know, that's for you guys to try out, but 2 to 3 coats, you'll get this solid foundation that you can see, and it does look fantastic. Next up, we're painting in all these green details, and I'm using Striking Scorpion Green. Now this is going to be over all the cables, all the vials, and there's quite a lot to cover. Rather than just pointing out, I'm going to do a couple of 360s, because they do vary depending on what little mini arms that you put here. Obviously you've got this big weapon here, which has got this cable. Might not have that, depending on your build. Of course, I'm following the Combat Patrol, where this is a requirement, in the sense of the gameplay purposes. But there's a lot to cover. Now, there are areas, so for instance, the tail, where you've got these little bits here, which I'm going to be painting in silver, like in between each section. But because I'm going to be base coating it in metallics, it doesn't matter if I'm messy and just slop it on. Obviously, just being careful as you near the other details that we've already painted. So there's a lot to cover, and we'll just get them all done. And next up, we're painting all those bone details. Nice and simple, nothing really to go on about apart from its Skeleton Horde, a classic colour for this. So you've got the 2 racks there, and you just got the little skull that's on the rack there. Nice and simple, just painting it straight on. And next up, we're base coating all of our metallic details. The silver's going to take quite a time, there's quite a lot of it, and we just need to be really careful as you approach the details we've already painted. But simply, we're just taking Iron Warriors and we're base coating all of them. Technically, obviously I've done all the spikes, but it's all the different tools and instruments. Pretty much the majority of the model. I have made a subtle little change into some areas where I've taken Brass Scorpion as an alternative colour. And for this one I've just done around the mask. I've just done the gun bits, as you can see, just to give a bit of distinction, just to really sort of highlight some different areas and make things stand out a little bit more. But essentially, with that done, our model is completely base coated. We just need for all those metallics to dry, and then we can shade them. And next up, we're shading those metallic details. And there's a couple of things to point out here. First of all, we're going to start with the silver. And quite obviously, I'm going to just go classic here of Nuln Oil, but we don't need to do every single detail. Now, obviously, things like chains and stuff where there's recesses we want to do, but when we get to all the little spikes, there's absolutely no point in doing it. If it's just a real small flat surface area, again, there's no point shading it. So just look at the ones that need recess shading, and since we're not going to do recess shading, but ones with recesses, just put the Nuln Oil on. Anything that doesn't need it, we can just automatically skip. And the same again goes for our brass scorpion details. I'm taking Reikland Fleshshade for this one. Essentially, I've left the mask. I've only done the barrel of the gun because there's recesses there. And again, it just makes sense to do that rather than this flat surface area, which we can keep nice and shiny without spoiling it. Once that's done, our model is officially battle ready. It's way beyond that, as you can see. We've only got 3 more paints to add, which we'll go through in the next step once the shade paints have dried. Our first highlight can be done simply with dry brushing, and once again we're going back to Pallid Wych Flesh, and this is for all of our skeleton horde details. I'd recommend using a small dry brush here, as we don't want to catch any of the things that we painted, because obviously it's quite a bright colour. We don't want to spoil the work that we've done. Just very gentle, simple dry brushing just to pick out all of those edges. Next up, we're focusing all of our striking scorpion details, and we're being a bit cheeky here. We're not going to highlight them. Essentially, what we're going to do is I've taken Ardcoat, a gloss varnish, and I've simply painted it straight on. A lot of this is vials and odd energy in different liquids, so I want them to have that kind of shine where any light angle hits it. So rather than highlighting, we're just being a bit lazy, but at the same time, with all the work we've done on the tabletop, it's just going to look incredible. So you could absolutely highlight them if you want to, or just be a bit cheeky, because there's a lot of subtle highlights that are already in place because we've been using contrast paints. So that's what I've done for that one, and we've just got one last bit to do, which is our metallic details. And finally, our last highlight is going to be Stormhost Silver, and we're just doing a cheeky dry brush here. Nice and simple over all the metallic details. Obviously, we're not worrying about those inner bits of the brass scorpion there. We can just catch those edges. We've got the tips of barrel there. And just whichever silver details you can catch, mainly we're focusing on the hooks, the chains, the bits that are sticking out here, those kind of aspects. Just catch them all, and it just finishes off the model, and with that, it's done. Now, being on a flying stand, you've got the option of doing a base. I'm going to neglect to do the base this time round. There's no actual need to, but if you want to, of course, you can do it whichever way you want. But with that, our model is done. And there we have it. Our Drukhari Talos is complete. Now, it's one of those models that just looks incredibly complex to paint at first glances, but when you break it down, it's very straightforward. And this method, while it has some complexity, once it's understood and you get the process, it's incredibly quick and straightforward. I mean, for reference, it took half a day from start to finish, and that's including the recording too. It's really that easy. Now, if this video has inspired your ideas for doing your very own Talos, as well as your own Drukhari models, then be sure to give it a like. Share the video as well, because that means others can discover this channel and all the content within, including many award-winning models that you can absolutely recreate yourselves. And if you're new, be sure to subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest guides and tutorials that I'm making. Every bit of support is appreciated and vital, and it does something truly wonderful, because supporting me means I get to continue supporting you, the awesome Warhammer community. So, until the next video, do look after yourselves, and happy hobbying.